What up? Welcome back to the podcast. We are here just checking in with everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Don, me, and my wonderful co-host and brother Paul, aka.
This is qualified. How y'all doing? How y'all feeling?
I've realized every episode I have called you Paul, and that is not your name. We did explain it in one
Oh,
episode.
I think we explained the story. I think we
We
did.
definitely explained it in an episode, but for the new people that join, they're like, wait, Steven? Okay, maybe you say quals in conversation, but who the hell is Paul? So I realized that, but I'm not gonna not call you Paul. So everybody else just catch
Hey,
up.
you've been doing it since 2017. It's been a long time calling me Paul. So it's better. It's better than I was called Stanley by a family member.
Yeah,
So
that's
so it's better than that. But yeah, man, no, what's been going on in life lately, big dog?
um a few things. One of them is that I cannot seem to stay rested. By no means are we celebrities, and by no means is this 6 o'clock in the morning doing this recording. However, I don't see how these people do it. They go on tour and they travel and then they have to get up early in the morning for Good Morning America performances. I barely got out of bed. I feel like I got bags under my eyes and I feel like I look like that SpongeBob meme, when he don't have no water and he sunken in. That's how I feel on the inside. It's not like the last time with late nights and rough mornings, but my friends and I, well, Alice and I specifically do what we call Fridays.
Mhm.
Right, where it's Fridays and we get fried with our friends.
Yes.
Um, Fried Fridays turned into sit your ass down Saturday because I just had a lot of residual energy from the day before. Okay. And now it's Sunday and I'm still not together. So yeah, there goes that. But how have I been? Aside from that, I've been great. I feel like some things have been going on that I cannot recall because maybe I'm just not getting enough oxygen to my brain. Um, but yeah, all things good. What's been up with you?
Things have been good for the most part. I keep saying July has been a doozy because I know I've talked a lot in episodes about being in the midst of this transition. So that is still happening. But July has been a doozy because I think July has probably been the biggest test. So like as much as things have went, there have been things that haven't went my way, but I still feel like they're all like on the path to me ultimately getting to where I'm supposed to be right now in this season. So things have been good for the most part. Got some news last week that I was hoping would be better news, but we still move and we still push forward. But still got things in place. Made another major decision that I feel like is going to remove a huge weight off of my shoulders. So, and that will be fully into effect at the end of this week by the time that y'all see this. So, a test for sure, a lot of ups and downs, but I definitely think there's a clear path ahead, at least for getting to where I'm trying to be. So that's kind of where things are now, but it's a interesting place for sure. Very, very interesting.
That sounds about right. That also sounds about July. I
Yeah.
feel like good and bad things or great and things happen mid-year. And like July should be the peak of success. It should be the peak of greatness. It should be the peak of everything. But it's also like the turning point of the year. It's the midpoint. So
Yeah.
it's just like, all right, we did this for 6 months, my guy. What's next? Hopefully more good, but sometimes you gotta, get out the mud a little bit. So
Yeah, no, that's very real. I also think July is like really supposed to be the peak of summer because depending on what industry you're in and what you do, August isn't necessarily still summer because if you do anything sports related or school related, you don't really have in August. You're back into work mode immediately. Um,
mhm.
I can't speak to too many other industries, but it's like July is almost like that true peak. I mean, granted, America's America, but you got the fourth. You got Juneteenth. You know what I'm saying? So you usually July is supposed to be kind of like to me. It's always seemed like it's supposed to be the peak of summer. Then it's the seventh month if you believe in stuff like that. Completion, all of that good nature. So it seems like it's supposed to be a month of higher notes, but Like you
Yeah.
said, sometimes that ain't the case because it is that turning point. So it's like, all right, for the rest of this year, if I don't want to get stuck into these patterns or stuck into whatever the first 6 months felt like, I probably need to pivot, readjust, refocus. But yeah, life just life, and that's all it is.
On some true, like I call it self-love, other people call it narcissism. But on some true self-love, my favorite month, my second favorite month is July. But I'm most excited about July when it rolls around because it's a month before my birthday. It starts Leo season. I feel like I'm, in the oven or preheat a little bit. So I almost feel like invincible in July because I'm like, I'm here. I kind of show up like Andy in Toy Story when he pop out that box. That's that's me in July.
Such a Leo thing to say.
Thank you.
It's funny knowing as many Leos as I do, and I don't know. You really gotta know a Leo to appreciate a Leo, because if you don't know them and you just like see a Leo from afar,
Hate us. You hate us. I would hate us. I
it's
would
not a
walk
good look.
away.
Like, with no context, it's not a good look for Leo. I feel the same way about Capricorns though. I feel like in general we get a certain like rap, like if you don't know us and kind of understand how we operate. But but yeah, that is so very interesting to me. But preheat is crazy, but it tracks. It definitely makes sense.
Mhm.
It makes sense. But yeah, I'm tripping. That first question really, I lost it for a minute. That's what I was trying to find. The first
Sounds like you had some residual energy from this weekend as well.
must be, but the thing is, I didn't even do nothing yesterday. I didn't do nothing at all yesterday, really, except get a haircut. But that was pretty much it. So
And you look nice. I saw the little crisp lining. Also, you don't have on a do-rag.
this is the first episode in like maybe 3 episodes that I had on. I almost kept it on today. I was like, I probably shouldn't, given the fact that I just got a haircut. But
Okay, it's giving a new wig, okay?
look, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new me.
Listen,
Whole me. A whole me. But greatest fear. So we was talking off camera, and you said that you're not necessarily a fearful person, which I 100% can attest to and agree with from my personal experience with you. But what exactly do you feel like makes you not fearful?
I'm not 100% fearless, right? There's a certain latch to apprehension that lives in my spirit, but what the hell am I scared of? Nothing. Like, just try it. Just do whatever you want to do. Just go for it. The worst you can do is fail or somebody say no. So in that regard, like, what are you really losing? Just effort. So I don't know. I'm also an adventurous person. I mean, adventurous within reason. Like, I don't want to be like, ooh, this is so close to death and I'm getting the thrill out of it. Like, no, but I just like trying new things. I like doing stuff and you know what it is? I don't like to live a restrictive lifestyle.
That makes sense.
I don't like to live a restrictive lifestyle. So the times that restrictions are put on me, I'm like, I'm just ready to like explode or something. But no, I don't really have fears for real. I got a couple that you kind of grow up with. I have some things that I'm uneasy with, and then I have one that I'm gonna talk through in therapy. But other than that, like I'm just not a fearful person.
No, that's real. And I definitely see that you are I don't think there's much I've really seen you be not even just scared, but like fearful of, even in the uncertainty of an outcome. Which is so funny because I vividly remember advice you gave me on a specific situation where you spoke to the idea of the worst that could happen is this does not go the way that you think it will, or this does not work out the way that you think it does. But to be scared of what could happen is, I won't say that it's pointless, but it's limiting. It's restrictive. So I
Yeah.
definitely I definitely get that. I don't think I definitely think things that I'm fearful of deal in uncertainty, but more so I would say my biggest fear has always been, like, since I've been younger, is like disappointing people and letting people down. And not just anybody, but like people who are in my circle, like it kind of started with my mom, because it was growing up, like us being close and her raising us the way she did. Like if disappointment felt like the worst thing, that I could do. So that became a fear in a sense. And that also kind of stemmed from this, I'll call it pseudo pressure, because it was very much self-inflicted pressure, but I think it was just naturally how it can be in the environment. But our church, like our kind of community and network of people,
Hmm.
because of who my mom was and because of how she raised us to be, I feel like we stood out in this way that it wasn't like a superior type of thing. But from early on in high school, people looked at us like, oh, y'all definitely going to college. Y'all definitely going to these big schools and doing these big things. Like just before I even understood what applying to college meant, before I knew anything about that next chapter, it was already kind of being put on us to, in my mind at the time, exceed these expectations or just be this great, like go on and do these great things. And I think it also stemmed from there in regards to like, if I don't do that, like if I don't go to this, big college, or if I don't finish with whatever, if I don't accomplish whatever while I'm there, then it feels like I let people down or that I disappointed them. So for a while, I would say that's been, probably like my greatest fear. And that's developed into looking different ways as I've gotten older and became an adult. But that's the fear that like sticks out, when I hear the question or when I think about greatest fear. So not the exact same thing, but I feel like still somewhat in line with kind of what you said, because that is very restrictive, or can be if you allow it to. So yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense as a fear too, because and not even saying you have to be young for this to happen, because this can happen with 37-year-olds, but the more you put a plan, an assumed plan in front of somebody, potentially that opens up the door to say, what if I disappoint you because I'm not going to go that path, or I don't even know that I can like meet expectations in that regard. I think maybe that's not been a fear of mine because I don't think that people expect anything of me. And I'm sure that they do, but it's never been communicated to me as like the gold standard to say you will do this, you will do that. I really have kind of just floated through life. I do wish I had a little more direction and maybe that fear would come in, but yeah, I always tell people like don't put me on a pedestal. Don't say this like, oh, you do this well or you do that. Like I tell myself that, and I appreciate when people, give me kudos and my flowers or whatever you want to call it, but not too much because I don't want you to have this solidified view of me that now you are expecting me to live up to in your head because guess what? I'm not. And also, I don't like to do the things that people tell me to do. Good, bad, or indifferent. I am almost that adversarial to where if you tell me like you're gonna do this, I'll be like, just you wait. Haha. I'm not. Uh,
Adversarial that's a nice one. I'm gonna have to add that to the vocab.
screaming. Okay. The more you know. Um, but no, that is a fear, especially kind of presented to you at a younger age. It's just like, ooh, the pressures of the world. I'm 7. What?
Yeah, no, and it was, and looking back, obviously it wasn't intentional, and I highly doubt that, from those people and those adults at the time, that it was meant to be this it was meant to be the weight that I felt it as. But that's how I looked at it. Like I don't think that my sister necessarily looks at it the same, and I don't think that other, children and kids in general, wherever, that situation applies, necessarily decided to look at it that way. That was just me, and that's how that uh fear kind of developed. And funny enough, being in this season of transition is the first time where it's like, yeah, you really got to break that. You really got to break that idea of people's opinions, people's judgments, people's thoughts on what you should be doing, people's thoughts on how they feel like you should be operating, what they think is best for you. Like it's a weird balance to strike between knowing that people have your best interest at heart, but having to balance, okay, but you also not me. And you also don't have to live with these decisions and make these decisions and, deal whatever repercussions come from them. So yeah, interesting balance indeed. But kind of sticking with the well, that wasn't really as heavy as we thought it might have been. But I do think this next topic will be a little bit.
It
Um,
could have been. I decided not to reveal those fears. We'll just talk to Wanda about them.
Very fair. Valid, valid, always valid. But hardest loss was something else that we said we wanted to talk about. And so when you mentioned this, did you just mean in the most general sense, like whatever is the first thing we think about, or were you talking about a specific type of loss?
I mean, loss is loss. Like it,
Yeah.
whatever it is, if your greatest loss is losing your favorite game for your Xbox, then so be it, right? But anytime that question comes up, my greatest loss in life has been my grandmother.
Mm,
I lost her in 20 um, 2009, 2010.
okay.
It was spring of 2010. And not to bring the mood down since we said we weren't gonna get super heavy, but no, like that was rough for a lot of reasons. And to date, I have not experienced loss like that ever. This happens to be a loss of a life and loss of a family, but like the loss, you can grieve anything. You can lose a job, you can lose some money, you can whatever you lose, like there's still grief that's gonna come in with that. But losing my grandmother, oh my God, you talk about gutted. And it wasn't just like, oh, she was older and she passed. Like it was some family things going on. And I talked to my grandmother every day. She's like a third parent. And I hadn't talked to her in months, like a week before my 19th birthday. So this is August 2009. Till the next time I saw her was her funeral in April of 2020. I mean,
Mm,
2010, excuse me. Yeah, so it was having to deal with a lot and process a lot and fall out with family and all these other things. Like it was rough. And I think that was the first time I had truly experienced depression and not knowing it and trying to float through life. And that ended up being a spiral where, I just was not present. And I mean, we talked about this before, but I got kicked out of school and just my life just kind of was what I felt like as close to rock bottom at the time. So to try to recover and repair from that loss took time. Probably still, well, not still taking time, but just some elements of that as I get introduced to other things. So that was by far my greatest loss. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, it is I am still amazed by the parallels that we have sometime
Mhm.
because it is insane. I didn't realize that that was connected to your time of being kicked out of school. Because so is my greatest loss. And my greatest loss also deals with a family member. And it was my uncle. So I think looking back on it now, I understand way more why it hit me then. And like you said, I think that there was a period, an extended period of depression that I didn't even realize I was in because I at the time wasn't aware of half the things that I was even feeling and like why I was feeling them. But yeah, my uncle, you said third parent. My uncle in a very interesting way was my dad's brother. So because of the weird relationship that, I've had and definitely had with my father at the time, the relationship with my uncle was so pivotal because it wasn't for me. I never looked at it as like it wasn't a competition between them two. There
Right.
was just a connection with my uncle that felt father like, which can happen regardless. But
Yeah, yeah.
with him, like that was a person like wrestling. Like I got into wrestling because of him. Like every pay-per-view, I'm at his house, watching wrestling and just small stuff, all the stuff that you kind of get taught, as a boy, and about being a man. Those lessons and those conversations came from him more so than they did my father, like especially like in the early ages. So sophomore year. No, this is freshman year. This is freshman year of college for me. And I think more than anything, it was the way that I got the news. So I know that you said, the last time you saw her was August of 2009, and then you didn't see her until, her funeral. With my uncle, I think I saw him before I went off to school. But when I went off to school, we hadn't talked uh no, was this? No, this was freshman year. Yeah, yeah. But we hadn't talked since I had gotten to school. And so I remember I was walking into Dobbs. Shout out Dobbs for y'all that know. Um,
Ernie Dobbs.
but so I'm walking into Dobbs and I get a call from my dad, which is only interesting because I don't get calls from him. So it was a part of me that like a radar already went off, like something was wrong. And so like when he shared the news, it just kind of I don't think I'd ever really felt shock like that ever, like a true stop in your tracks moment of like, what you mean? Like what you know? And it was weird because I'm like, I'm doing the usual like, what you mean? Like, are you serious? And he just kind of had this like nonchalant response of like, well, yeah, I'm serious. Why else would I say it? It was just, and it was just one of them, like in the moment, it was just like, this is, it was just a lot to process. I was meeting up with friends at the time as well. So it was like trying to hide that and not, make that a whole thing that people felt the need to talk about. But definitely the greatest loss because I think it just put a lot in perspective for me because individually and personally, it was like, okay, I had to grapple with how I felt about that connection in relation to the one with my dad. And then also understanding that my dad has lost a brother too. So there's all these elements of it. But then it was also this idea of okay, why like being able to handle it. And so coming into that next school year and that being a semester that, I got kicked out and that even I remember the conversation with my mom where I was like, yeah, the grades ain't looking too hot. My mom is just like, well, what's wrong? What's happening? Why you not focused? You wasting my money. You wasting your time. This, that, and the third. And I remember I actually like I broke down and I, admitted that I never really processed or got over, my uncle's death. And that I think that was the first time for my mom that she kind of realized that that wasn't something that I was talking about or processing or really moving, forward with or making progress on. So yeah, still to this day, probably the loss that has shook me the most and has had the largest or the largest and longest impact actually. But
Mhm.
so
And and hearing you say there's definitely some parallels with that. And I love my grandmother down still to this day, right? Like she is the angel on my shoulder. But it wasn't just the loss of her because I dealt with death since like 6 months old. Like I come from a very old family. I was at a funeral like all the time, right? So I was very familiar with death. It wasn't so much losing her. It was the ripple effect of everything else that I lost after that. I feel like I lost a part of me. I lost my family in the process, and some of this was my decision, but I felt that the family, and I say the family meaning my daddy's side of the family, was playing in my face
mm,
with some stuff, and my daddy in particular, because so long story short, I think I mentioned this before. I don't really, rock with the man who is responsible for birthing me into the world. But we ended up getting into a brawl, like a fist fight, in front of my grandmother's house the week before my 19th birthday. And it was embarrassing. It was ghetto. Like, first of all, I'm a lover, not a fighter, right? But then to do this out in public in front of my grandmother, and I remember seeing it happen in slow motion. I remember seeing this man like walk down the street as I'm being like choked out on a tree, right? Like I'm really, forget my French, I'm really getting my ass beat. But my daddy was much bigger than me. He's like 6'1", stocky football player type dude, right? And then you got me. I'm just this. What's going on, right? Like so I'm seeing it happen in real time, like what? But after that, I was like, no, I'm not dealing with you, your brother, your none of that. Like, don't play in my face. Like, I still never got the phone call that she had passed from him being my daddy. One of my uncles, like, I had to hear that from my godmother who called my mama to call me. And
mm,
I'm just like, that's wild. And then now you want to play in my face at the funeral and like, we are this happy family, like, nah, get out. So to have lost a grandparent, a third parent, my heart and knowing that that meant I now lost a entire side of my family, or felt like I lost that at one time. And that was the side that I primarily grew up with. So like family reunions, this big family aspect, all of these things. So I'm like, damn, if family can do this to you, who are these people on the street? Like anybody can do that. So I hardened up quite a bit. And maybe that's why I'm a hard ass now, to protect my soft mesh marshmallow heart that I really have, you know. But yeah, like to lose all of those things and then a domino effect. Like I lost school, I lost scholarships, I lost sense of self. Like that was just a huge vat of loss
Yeah.
that I had to bounce back from, but it took a while.
Yeah, no, the ripple effect is real and is the toughest part because you don't know how long that ripple is going to happen. You don't even half understand what's going on in the ripple until after a lot of it has kind of taken place. And then it's
Mhm.
stopping the ripple. Like once you realize the ripple is happening, you actually have to be intentional about stopping this ripple because at a certain point, that healing or that grieving, it becomes, I think it's weird. Like when everything first happens, I think there's a part of it to where like you give yourself grace and you understand it takes time. But then there does come a certain point where, okay, things do take time and ain't nobody rushing you. And ain't nobody putting no shot clock, even if it's digital. Ain't nobody putting no clock on you. You know what I'm saying? But but at a certain point, it is on you. At a certain point, you do have to stop the ripple, the ongoing process of things that can go bad, like the downslide of how things can just go when one negative thing happens. That's life. But yeah, trying to find that balance and get into a place where you realize, okay, this one is on me. This is my decision to stop it. And also stopping the ripple effect doesn't negate grace and doesn't negate um processing in your own time, but
Mhm.
it can go on forever if you let it. So yeah, that ripple effect is probably the biggest piece for sure.
Yeah, and that's actually not to early segue, but I think that now thinking back on it is one of the early times where I developed a statement of motivation. So I guess a phrase that I use the most is that I've been through worse. I've
Mm.
been through worse. Even if I have not, I just like I've been through worse. Like to experience that at 19 and everything that had happened, that was the worst thing that I had experienced at the time. So anytime something bad happens, I'm like, I've been through worse. Alpha came up. And I was like, I've been through worse. Grad school came up. I said, I've been through worse. I didn't realize at the time grad school was the thing that was the worst because then, panic attacks and having to prove everything that you did wrong in undergrad. And as other things come up, that is the one thing that I always say, like, it's okay. I've been through worse just because I know that some element of this I've experienced before and I survived. So as they say, I've survived 100% of my worst days. Took a long time, but I did it. So what's something that you have said along the way that like gets you by?
Um, honestly, that I'm Rita Qualls' son.
Okay.
And I'm Roger Walker grandson. But that's what my mom used to say.
You
Uh
better be first to your name. Come on.
Look, first in my name for sure. But well actually technically I'm not
Well,
first.
technically you are not,
I'm
but
not, but no, I didn't think it would become something that I would say, but in my moments where I feel myself doubting myself or I forget who I am, sometimes I do have that moment to myself where that's not something I usually say like out loud. That's not a phrase that people hear me say, but it's very much like or just saying like you a qualls, like just that kind of for me, that's a reference to what I've been through and what I've experienced. So it's
hmm
or like what my family has experienced and been through and how they persevered as well. So that will be something that falls more in line with the motivational piece of like, you read a qual son. That means something. Sorry. Rita Griffin's son. I gotta remember the woman is married now. Rita Griffin's son. Sorry, mama, if you're watching. I apologize. She be getting on me about that. But yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Shout out to Joe.
The show. Big shout out. The last thing I was going to say was I think we both have words that are very particular to us. Yours is by far absolutely, and you just use
Oh,
it in a lot of different contexts.
absolutely.
Mine has become diabolical, but apparently I didn't realize I was ruffling so many feathers by using the word diabolical so much. My bad, people. I'm sorry.
Well,
Appa-
who feathers you ruffling? What's
I
wrong with
don't.
that?
I don't know. Apparently, the world, but I've been seeing on the social media nets and everything, Instagram and Twitter. Everybody mad at the word diabolical. We overusing it now. You don't got to show you got a degree by using the word diabolical. I'm sorry. My bad that the word applies.
I like that.
Sheesh.
I have not used it. You do use it a lot, though.
I
I
do.
will say that is,
I do.
especially within the last 365 days, that has been at the top of your vocabulary list for sure. I would have, if you asked me what my word was, I would not have known. But the fact that you said absolutely, I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And it doesn't matter. You could be affirming. You you could be sarcastic. You use it in so many different ways, and I just find it hilarious because you don't realize that you say it as much as you do. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
this episode has been brought to you by Absolutely and Diabolical. This is great.
No,
Oh, we need merch. Absolutely Diabolical.
yes, that's good merch. That's a good merch idea.
Yeah,
Good
I will
merch.
wear that.
Thanks. Ooh, little teaser for the audience. So I thought about this. I heard a string of Michael Jackson songs back to back, and I had one of the moments where I realized, wow, he may have actually never missed ever in his career. But then I was like, when is Michael Jackson's birthday? Because I knew the date of his passing had passed already. Do you want to do a top 20 list of Michael Jackson songs for his birthday? It's at the end of August.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's coming up.
Mm.
Um, but I think he's a Virgo. No, is
Yes.
he? Leo? No, he's a Virgo. Whitney's a Leo. Shout out to Nippy.
When is the
Um, answer the question at hand. Sure. Yeah.
Yes, we should do one for Whitney too. I want to we don't talk about music too much, but I know that we can and we shall
Mhm.
and we will. But I think this would be a nice way to let the audience know where our head be at, with the music sometimes. So let's get some listening here, man. Let's talk about some songs. Let's talk about some great artists.
Okay. Yeah, we could do a music episode.
I like it. I like it. I think the audience will enjoy it. Interesting snafu, but great conversation. Great transparency. I feel like we both shared a very serious and deep story, but also still managed to give y'all some laughs as well. And with that being said, Velvet Road Keith Lee, 8.8 out of 10. 8.8 out of 10. I like it. I like it.
Okay. Shout out to the Olympic score. We stuck the landing. All right.
Perfect analogy. And until then, and until the next episode, we will catch y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.